Hello, my name is Tom and I'm a curler. Being from New York, it was kind of hard to admit that at first, but I think I'm better now. Actually, the real reason I'm here is to tell you a story about how I became a member of the Granite Curling Club in Seattle. I'll try to tell the whole story using only names and faces of people in the club past and present. Before we get started, let me make one thing perfectly clear. There's a lot of bad puns and bad wordplay to follow, and if anyone is offended, it was purely unintentional and no harm was meant. Hopefully this will be some good clean fun for everyone involved. I tried to include as many people as possible, but if your name isn't mentioned, it probably means one of two things. One, I don't like you, or two, your name is either boring or doesn't fit into any category. Take Greg Smith, for example. I'm sure Greg Smith is a good guy, but a president should have a more forceful name. Therefore, Greg Smith won't be in this video. Hopefully, he won't go all nuclear on me, but Greg Smith won't be shown here. Sorry, Greg Smith. Now, where was I? I was telling you a story about how I became a member of the Granite Curling Club. Growing up in New York, there were a lot of jobs I wanted to do, and I tried them all. I was a potter, I was a piper, I worked for some drapers for a while, and I even hung out with parsons until I decided that the clergy wasn't for me. Plus, I didn't like to kneel on the pews all the time. It was really tough on my knees. So I moved to England, where I became a prince. That turned out to be a real disaster, especially the part about marrying Camilla. So I left and I got a job as a shoesmith for a couple of months. I even dabbled in harness racing for about a year, but I always came in last, so I quit that in a hurry. Looking for more adventure, I went on a world tour with the artist formerly known as Prince. After the tour ended, I hijacked a pirate ship and flew the Jolly Roger. Now, I'm not positive, but I think that's an oxymoron. I was living the life of Riley, but not for long. After one too many Jamesons, I found myself sitting at home switching through the channels with my remote. As I sat there watching reruns of Benson, I knew I needed more from life. I needed a long break. So I packed up and moved to Dennis, Massachusetts. While I was there, I learned a Boston accent, but not much else. So I loaded up my Avi, packed up my TV, and headed for BC. I ended up in a town called Richmond. It was okay, but in the summer the grass turned brown, the winters were too harsh, and in the spring the skies were always gray. So once again I set off, looking for someplace more pleasant. I somehow acquired a cheesy Mexican accent, and I moved to London. Then it was on to Paris. Isn't he just lovely in the springtime? I was going to visit Israel, but my friend Kim never returned my calls, so I simply walked through cornfields, and eventually I spent 2 summers doing odd jobs in the Sahara. I heard there was a lot of oil buried under the sand, so I borrowed my friend's derrick, and I dug and dug and dug and dug and dug and dug. But in the end, I was left with nothing but a big pit, man. My wife and I went over every grain of sand with fine-tooth combs. But even though we never struck it rich, our son did find some really cool little rocks that he could play with. It was getting hot, so I gaily walked to the local Irish pub. I think it was Murphy's or Ryan's or Sully's, something like that, but that's not important. It was ladies' night, and it was only 7:45, so there was no cover. Luckily, happy hour was an 8-ender, so I made it with 15 minutes to spare. I was parched, and I needed a little drink, something with a kick. I wanted a real beverage, not a CC and Severin, and definitely not a Hockebeck's or a Sharps. So I ordered a couple of Jaegers, a Miller, and a Schaefer, and then I topped it off with a Bailey's on the rocks. I was getting pretty loaded when I realized my waitress was a real fox, and she knew it. I finally got up the nerve to introduce myself to her. "Nice to meet you," she said, with a real hearty laugh. By the way she walked, I'm guessing her pantyhose were too tight, but I wasn't complaining. When it came time to pay, I realized that all I had left was some butter and an ain. "What's a butter worth?" I asked the bartender. "Is it worth more than an ain's worth?" I really didn't want to know, 'cause I knew it wouldn't be enough. "That's only worth about 3 pesos, shouted the bartender. "Who do you think you are? If I had my way, I'd toss you out of here and you'd be barred for life." I started getting worried when the bartender started throwing fits, but I really got scared when he pulled a gun. I lit a cigar and the bartender really went McNuts. "You can't smoke cigars in a bar," said the bartender as he came after me. I just managed to escape that place by the skin of my teeth. I took the Nicole way out of there, but I should have taken the Larway. For that matter, I could have taken the Travis Way, the Quentin Way, the Brandon Way, or even the Bruce, Marianne, or Shane Way, but you get the point. Just to make sure, I asked Cal if the Larway out of there was safe. "Hey, Cal, can you tell me where to go to get something to eat?" I asked. The bartender was running after me, but I got out of there, Jason, the nick of time. It was getting late. It had to be at least 11 p.m., so I ran to the nearby woods to seek some shelter. It was dark, but I had my Coleman lantern, so I was able to find my way over to the good side of the woods. It was a cold night, and I almost froze my yellow wickies off. Miraculously, I found an old, comfy couch, but unfortunately some sleepy architect dude beat me to it. When he finally woke up, he told me his name was Lyle, and he introduced me to his wife, Eula. I didn't think that was his real name, but I didn't really care. "Can I borrow your car, Lyle?" I asked politely. "Sure you can," he replied. "You're welcome to use it, but I need air in my tires, though. Also, my cash flow is the lowest it's been in a while, so if you could chip in for a quart of gas, that'd be a big help." I was getting hungry, so we ran past Eula to the parking lot. "Get in the car, son," Lyle ordered, and off we went. Looking for a place to eat, we drove past a bunch of McDonald's, a VFW Hall, and a Darrell Hall before stopping at the Wendell Hall. I made my way through the galley and noticed there were 3 booths that were taken. I did find one that was available, though, and I quickly took me a seat in the Kono. I needed something to fill me up. Maybe a burger, or a Frank, or perhaps a Bradasani. There was a Mary cook in the kitchen, so I asked her what she'd recommend. "I've got a nice stew in the pot," she said, "but you'll have to wait about 20 minutes while it simmers. In the meantime, why don't you try some of the ling cod? It's so fresh the chef is still out back baiting the hook." "Sorry, I'm allergic to fish," I said. "Don't be so curt. Fish is good for you," she bellowed back. But I'd made up my mind and ordered the last turkey from the back of the house. "Holy cannoli, that is one good-looking bird," I exclaimed. I had hoped it was cooked in margarine because I've had some bad experiences with butter. I was starving, so I ordered some quiche Lorraine and a big plate of beef Wellington. For dessert, I scarfed down a biscotti and had a frosh slice of Marionberry pie. "I could really go for a glass of wine, man," I told the waitress. "If you've got a couple of vintage Rieslings, that'd be sweet." When my feeding frenzy was done, I paid the bill. But Delisa looked perturbed, so I paid her too. I ran to the John, and because my hair is in my eyes, I trip over a mat. On my way out of the John, my hair is not in my eyes anymore, but I trip over another mat and fell over an invisible cat and twisted my ankle. I also lost my sense of spelling, so I went to the doctor, and he told me I needed a cane and some exercise, so I limped to the nearby ballpark to see if I could get in a game. I rounded up 7 of my friends and formed a team. The name Mudville 9 was already taken, so we called ourselves the Melville 8. Our fielding was really good for the entire game, but unfortunately our pitcher couldn't get the ball over the plate, and we went to extra innings. I hit a game-winning triple, and the crowd went mild. After the game, I gave Cindy McCain and Joe Mabat and headed for the airport. Since I used to be in the Army, I got to fly out of Andrews Air Force Base. Not knowing where to go, I headed west, and after a week and a day, I ended up in Seattle. In that city, you can always tell when it's springtime because an April gale inevitably comes sliding in from the north. I took a cab to Northgate and went to get some ice cream from Ben & Jerry's. They were out of vanilla, so I chose a Nutty Buddy. I found my way over to Aurora Avenue, where I was confronted by a gang of angry local youths who tried to rob me. I knew I could lick those frickin' evil kids. They were a bunch of Nancy boys, so I laid them low and I made a right onto 128th Street. My ice cream started melting, so I ducked into the nearest building. I ran across a lot of strange characters there, and they told me there was something called the April Spiel going on. Upstairs, there was a lot of good dancing. But even more bad dancing. I was somehow strangely intrigued. Something just drew me in. I thought I might get lucky when the lights went out in the arena and I heard strange sounds coming from the ice. The lights came back on quickly though, so I decided to skip upstairs to the bar. I drank a couple of shots, and then I went to the ice and I threw a couple shots, and decided to join on the spot. The place had me hook, line, and sinkowitz. Now every night I thank the Lord for everything He's given Tammy. I'm very thankful for having a nice place to hang out with good friends and have fun watching a great sport. Not to mention eating good food with the ability to work off the extra weight without having to go to the gym. Here's wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. If that doesn't work, at least have yourself a Merry Alice Christmas. Now go out on the ice and win one for the gripper. As they say out on the sheets, good curling.